folks. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And there's been a lot of criticism of new media. Some people call it social media, but if you're a journalist or you are a producer of content, it is somewhat of one of the greatest tools that has ever been created, because you get to meet and collaborate with like-minded people. And my next guest is somebody who I've never met. I've never seen her lecture. I've never seen her perform yoga. I've never seen her inspire or, transform people's lives, but I can feel deeply inside, based on her point of view, that in fact she gives love to the world through a coalition of mind, body, and spirit. She's been dubbed quite a few very, very lofty titles. These are just names, but at the end of the day, you don't get those names unless you actually are in the trenches, doing the work, and inspiring people around you and improving your world. Dayna Seraye, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much. Such a delight to be here with you today.
Could you possibly do for the audience be able to chant or sing a healing song for us right now?
Sure. A healing song. Let's see.
I only say this because I just feel like the energy in the world, in the Tao, my teachers, they just talk about this huge imbalance of energy in the world right at this moment. And whether or not you agree with that or not, that's why I ask you to some sort of healing, anything you want.
Okay. Yeah, well, I love to sing. I love to chant. It's been a part of my practice for a really long time, and in particular, devotional healing songs. So it would be lovely to share. This one that I feel called to share is an invocation to the elements, and really a space in between all of those. But these elements are truly who we are, and coming into remembrance and reconnection with all of the elements of nature is something that we desperately need on our planet at this time to restore balance. So this song, this chant, repeats over and over again, and I'll just do it a few rounds, and y'all can join in if you'd like, and invoke the great wisdom teachings of each of these elements to create more balance and return to this remembrance.
It sounds wonderful.
The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 ayo, 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 ayo. Aye, 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 ayo, 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 ayo. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 ayo, 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 ayo. Aye, 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 ayo, 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 ayo. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. Aye, 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 ayo, 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 ayo. Aye, 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 ayo, 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 ayo.
Dayna Seraye already singing on the Jake Feinberg Show. Such a beautiful way to start the program in the morning. How early on in your life did you recognize that music, the singing, and the language of music could be a healing factor. I mean, in this country, we've been taught to sit and watch in a very sort of egalitarian form. I mean, not every, there's jam concerts, there's festivals, but for the most part, you take in music in a very it's supposed to be for entertainment. In the motherland, for a long time it was calls for a spiritual ceremony, or it was a dedication to the animals. And my gut tells me that you saw the world at an early age, and I was hoping you could talk about when you realized the healing power of song and music.
Well, I sort of stumbled into the shamanic kind of indigenous traditions when I was pretty young. I was an adolescent, 13, 14. I believe one of the first books I read, I pulled off my father's shelf, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Such a classic.
Oh, I've never read that, but that sounds great.
It's a classic introduction to magic and mystery, and just the subtle energies, and this idea that we are so much more than these physical bodies and these limitations of our mind. And so this entry into the possibilities that the invisible realms reveal to us came at a young age. And I also started reading some Native American prophecy type literature, and really felt a deep connection and call to this way of living close to the earth, and praying with the earth and praying with the spirits of nature, and singing, maybe came a little bit later. I was very into the Grateful Dead at a very young age, so I would say that much of the beginning kind of singing came through there.
Really? Wow, that's remarkable. I mean, I actually never saw them, but they are the most inspiring live band that I ever listened to. I mean, I play those CDs, live shows in my car, but I never saw them live. You saw them live?
I saw them live. I saw them live twice. I was 14 years old. Series last summer, 1995.
Right.
I saw them.
Wow. Okay.
For 2 shows. I got in right at the end, but that current of the vibration that was.
Thank you. Okay.
Really created by this band that held something extraordinary for people, and allowed you to kind of drop into this a little bit of an alternative, or for a lot of people, very alternative dimension of living, of loving. It really expanded. Right. And so that was in the 90s. I know, the Grateful Dead had been around a long time, and that was at the very end of that, that process. But that was pretty significant for me at that age. And, I sort of dabbled in my own kind of shamanic practices. I would hang out with my friends by the river, and we would sing, and we would sort of play. We would chant, and we would make up songs ourselves and play drums. And I was always very connected in that way to wanting to be in nature and wanting to be connected to the current of life that I found there. I at that point in my life, I was in suburbia outside of Washington, D.C., and it didn't have an aliveness for me, this sort of strip mall kind of suburban lifestyle. So I would find my way to the forest. I would hang out at the river and the forest. That's where I wanted to be. And at a certain point, I came out here to Colorado, where I still am, to Boulder, Colorado, and actually finished high school in Colorado, and really just kind of soaked in the nature, the beauty that is here. And at a certain point, I kept deepening into this study. I've always been very interested in the esoteric and the mystic traditions, in shamanic traditions, indigenous wisdom, indigenous culture. My family, actually, my mom is from a small town in South Dakota that is right next to the Pine Ridge Reservation. So there's always this kind of a bit of a relationship to Native American tradition and the curiosity and a feeling of deep resonance on a lot of levels with the way that they are so deeply connected culturally to the earth and to the energies of spirit that move in all things. You know, the words, all my relations, that is such a part of the culture of the language, really acknowledges that we are in connection with all at all times. And so this always fascinated me. I was very much like not that interested in sort of going along with the crowd or doing what everybody else did, or, you know, being a part of the, you know, whatever the pop culture was. I was very interested in exploring these other ways of being and remembering the ancient ways. So singing came along, you know, it was always kind of a little thread, and then I got involved in some shamanic traditions through visiting Brazil and South American culture, and started devotional singing in that context. A lot of channeling of spirit songs, a lot of, you know, singing directly to the elements or to the earth energies, to the moon, to the sun, like really honoring these relationships with these different energies of nature. So that really came alive right in my early 20s, and has stayed really a big part of my life in many ways, and very, at the same time, was very dropping into and deepening my experience of the yogic path, and coming into the understanding that in Sanskrit, you know, the vibrational quality of the sounds holds the meaning and really invokes in us a power to align ourselves with these energies and to clear out, so both a sense of clearing and a sense of being able to release, and then also an invocation, like really these energies activate something deeply in us and help us to align our body, mind, and spirit, our soul, with our true essence. And so for me, the power of sound and singing, you know, it's actually been a very interesting journey, because I was one of those kids who actually was told at a very young age that I couldn't sing, I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. It's actually the exact quote I was fed.
Was that from your parents, or who was that from?
It was from my parents, yeah, it was from my parents. And, you know, it was something that at this point, you know, I feel like it was you know how you get these little nuggets in your life, like you get stamped in a certain way, and it's your journey to overcome and to evolve beyond whatever limitations you've been given.
Absolutely.
This has been one of mine, and a really big one, where, you know, opening my voice and my heart to sing has been such a journey, you know, for me, of overcoming my insecurities, my vulnerabilities, my fears, my feelings of not good enough. It's been a direct kind of way of me working that in my own life. And, you know, over the years, it's become more and more comfortable, you know, but it's still a thing for me at times to really like, okay, like, but what for me has helped me to overcome that is to really tap into the power of devotion, and to really understand that these limitations of the mind, these insecurities, these kind of ways that I keep myself limited, are really just in the mind, and they're actually selfish. They're a way of being self-centered, and, you know, just being completely wrapped up in myself and in my own egoic process, and sort of feeling like I'm that important that people should care, you know, like.
Yeah, no, you are. I mean, you are on fire. I mean, this is like, that was an incredible answer to that. I guess, you know, Dayna, can you talk about, as a woman, when you were first authorized to perform sacred rites of a religion, whether it was in Brazil or because you know, the empowerment of women is essential. My two daughters, you know, they are the future of our society, to lead us into the light. And I was wondering if you could talk about when you were first authorized to perform one of these sacred rites, especially, I mean, outside of the, this Western dogma of, the idea of one thing I think that you've done remarkably well, without knowing you very well, is that you've been able to live life by your own rules, not the rules that society says you should live them by. So I was just hoping you could talk to the audience about that.
That's a big topic, and a really, really important one. I agree that this empowerment of the feminine, of women, is something that is more and more growing in, it's gaining popularity, it's gaining momentum. It's pretty accepted in the circles I run in at this point that this is happening, and this reclaiming of the feminine and of the ways of the feminine, in both men and women, is what we really need. And that is not just being female, but it's actually an intuition. It's a softening. It's a way of allowing. It's a receptivity, and it's a connection to this. These topics we've been talking about: connecting to the earth, feeling relationship, not being so rigid or stuck up in our minds or stuck in our own process, but actually being in a fluid relationship and dance with all of life. That, for me, is what we're reclaiming when we speak of reclaiming the feminine. And it's a very different, I even think that the way you asked that question is interesting, like when you were authorized to perform these rites. And it's an interesting thing because I've had many different teachers and mentors and guides on the path. And in some ways, I can't pinpoint a moment where I feel like one person in particular sort of like acting directly into spirit and the natural intelligence that flows through each and every one of us, but actually is that inner authority, that it doesn't have to come from outside of ourselves and be given this sort of like mandate, like now you can do this. It's very much been for me a much more organic process of unfolding of an inner journey and stepping forward into that, baby step by baby step, as it feels safe and right and harmonious, and there's like an invitation for that, and stepping forward in that way from really an inner authority and an inner perspective. So there has been, I have been ordained as a priestess, and there has been, trainings that I've done and sort of certificates I've received that have given me a sense of confidence, I would say, I guess, in offering what I offer. But at the same time, I feel like this feminine way is a little bit more of an inner journey and a coming into wholeness within oneself, that we actually don't need someone outside of us to give us any sort of authority, but we claim it from within, and then let the energy of spirit, let the devotion of our own heart space, let the medicine of our own soul guide the way.
I guess, Jake Feinberg couldn't go to, the Amazon and be allowed to perform these types of sacred rites. So, I mean, can you talk about when the elders from a community, just paint that picture of being somewhere outside of this Western culture when you were looked up towards to perform a healing sacred rite?
I feel like most of my experiences in Brazil or South America have not been me performing rites or, leading a lot of different things. I've certainly led my own retreats and offered my own programs in a certain way. But when I've been with those elders, I feel like I've been actually receiving and listening and being able to be a student and a learner in those processes. So, I feel like, I don't actually feel like I've gone to these places and taken the staff of leadership and like done that more as I've gone to these places, learned deeply, and then brought it home and offered in the ways that feel right to me. And, you know, I really have tended to blend a lot of traditions. You know, like there's been the Brazilian shamanic traditions, there's been the Indian, you know, yogic traditions, there's been the Celtic priestess tradition, there's been the Native American tradition, Afro-Brazilian kind of energies. And what I've done is learned from all of these different places and elders. And then I sort of come home with it. I bring it into myself, and then I digest, and I see how the alchemy wants to happen within me. And then I've offered from that place. And I feel, so it feels a little
okay, so let me
different
ask you this. This is, you articulated that very well. Can you give an example of nourishment from any one of those cultures and how you applied that to your own practices in Boulder?
Absolutely. So, you know, I think going back to song and chant, in the Brazilian shamanic traditions I've experienced, it's a huge part, this singing to the energies, singing in invocation, like the Orisha tradition, the Afro-Brazilian Orisha tradition. The Orishas, or Orishas, as you might say in English, are different energies of nature. So, and they're personified. They have a look and a feel, and, you know, similar to the gods and goddesses of the yogic tradition, the Vedic tradition, the tantric traditions. They're energies of nature that have been personified as archetypes. And so I've received so much from my experiences in these cultures. Let's just take the Afro-Brazilian Orisha tradition for this moment, and singing to the waters. You know, you sing to the sweet waters. You really call in that energy into your own being, and, you know, you can start to move and flow and feel the energy in your body. And it's a very magical thing to invoke that energy so strongly that it comes right in. And then there's the singing to the ocean, and that goddess of the ocean, that energy of the great mystery and the great mother. And there's energy of singing to the hunter in the forest, and this energy of, you know, being able to track and to be so silent as we move through the forest. And so all of these different ways of singing to nature is something that I learned very deeply in this Brazilian tradition and then have brought back. And so I hold my own rituals oftentimes on the full moons, the new moons. You know, it doesn't actually, I don't even need an excuse of a moon, you know, like just, but I love to keep the rhythms of the moon, because it feels like the feminine current, you know, really coming back into connection with rhythm is such a reclaiming of the feminine. But, you know, I'll go to the river here in Boulder, Colorado, and whether it's by myself or with a community of people, we'll sing to the energy of the water and really allow ourselves to release. You know, the waters is so much about release and letting go and surrender and forgiveness, and that setting sun energy of like what needs to be fully surrendered. And so go to the water and sing to that energy and sort of offer up my prayers and offer up whatever needs to be offered up, so that I can create the space in my whole system for what it is that I'm aligning with. So that's one way that I bring it in, you know, daily in my life at this point.
You know, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, truthfully, if you're absorbing this stuff on the ground, how do you make it authentic for those? I mean, I mean, I'm reading that, you know, comfort transformational experience with Dayna Seraye. You know, I mean, how can you authentically transmit that to people that are seeking their true nature when, I mean, these are powerful, you're talking about seriously powerful ceremonies that maybe you don't actually perform there in Brazil or Latin America or Bali or wherever, you know, India, but then you're bringing it back. And how do you make it authentic for these people as opposed to just like a boutique, let's sign up for a weekend of enlightenment. I don't want to judge people that are coming to your programs. It's just, to me, I am looking for you have the practical application. So how do you make it authentic for those who are just sort of, searching without being on the ground?
Well, I think there's different levels and layers in what you're speaking to, and some people, the most important thing, it's not even a matter, like, I feel like actually simple is powerful. So simple is powerful. And we don't have to be so complex. And, it might feed me to be a little bit more complex in my practices personally, but it actually is so healing and magical to be so simple. And what I feel like most people need in the world right now is simply an experience of connection, to come into connection with themselves, to really feel their hearts, feel their bodies, feel a connection with each other. It's so powerful. Like, we live in a time, space, dimension, here on this planet at this time where we're so disconnected and isolated. And so it's incredible medicine for people just to experience a little bit of connection, to open their hearts a little bit, maybe shed a few tears, find their voice just a little bit. It's so healing when we can drop into a space of the soul, because so often we are living from the mind, and we are living from this ease and this connection. And so to just come into little moments of connection, I think, is what really people need. And so I don't necessarily, in all of my yoga classes or retreats and offerings, there's different levels that I can hold at the same time, where it depends on the audience. It depends on who's coming. Some people, if it's just an introduction into these ways or into connection, just some really simple breathing exercises. Feel like we really have lost a connection to the body. I was speaking to an astrologer friend of mine recently, and she was speaking of a prophecy of a Native American, I think it was a Hopi prophecy, this picture that was painted where the mind and the body of the modern man is completely disconnected. And that's so true when we look around our world. It's a symptom of the imbalance and the disconnect from the feminine, which had tended to be, related to the body, to the matter, to being physical. And there's been this like up and out and pull up into the mind and get lost in the stories of the mind and the ambitions of the mind. And so coming just into simple connection with sensation in the body is super healing for people. So there's a way that I tend to really simplify maybe some of what I've experienced and what I practice into simple bite-sized little nuggets that I can offer that feel really relevant to everyone. I mean, for me, every day to just sit in meditation and feel my body and to breathe it's a foundational practice. It's the essence. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Simple is powerful.
Can you talk about getting to a state of contemplation? How you've evolved in your meditative practices over time? Because I try to meditate 3 or 4 times a day, but only in small intervals, because my mind is. I just think you articulated it very well. The body of the car is very sleek, but there's no soul inside the car. I mean, when you speak about the male, and you articulated it a lot better than me. But I mean, how have you cultivated to get to the level of contemplation where you can feel your body and you can feel and you can get to contemplation?
Well, I've done a lot of yoga, and I've also done a lot of contemplative dance practices, in particular the 5 rhythm with an incredible teacher, Mosa Michaels, here in Colorado. And also my first yoga teacher, Sophia Diaz, also here in Colorado, who really brings you into the subtle dimensions of the body. It wasn't, for me, my entryway into these embodiment practices wasn't a power-based practice or, a super sort of exercise force type of practice. It was really a contemplative practice. It was really, slowing everything down and being able to really be mindful and take our time in our body and feel everything that comes up, So sometimes power practices, intense exercise also is really needed, those fiery practices to really move big energy so that we can then come into stillness. That's really important sometimes. And in the 5 rhythms dance, you go through a journey of, it's called a wave of these rhythms where you explore lots of different energies. It's a little bit similar to the elements. I practice a lot with the elements, and each element holds a different flavor of experience. And so when we can move in these ways, we can allow ourselves a more full spectrum of experience in our bodies and in our whole beings. So there's room for all types of movement in all ways, and at the same time, slowing way down and allowing ourselves to really, be present in each movement has been a huge part of my practice in coming into mindfulness and coming into more awareness. And for me, sitting practice came later. So there was a lot of movement practice, a lot of asana, a lot of dance, really, and that's a huge part of my practice still. And then at a certain point, I was able to find more stillness in myself. And now meditation is my foundational practice. I meditate every morning, and mostly, I meditate again in the evening. And, for me, it's 20 to 30 minutes each of those times. It's not a huge amount of time, but there's a quality when you first start meditating, it can feel very, very active, and it's not about perfection, and be aware of those thoughts and of the energy running through us. And as we develop this capacity to just stay present with whatever that is, to be the witness, to see it, to watch it, to not attach to it, to let it go, like, oh, wow, interesting, get curious about what's arising for us, but not like judge it as good or bad or right or wrong, but just to be curious and like allow the energy to keep flowing. That's the flow. That's the state I feel like is really where spirit runs the show, is when we can drop into a state of flow. And that is not attaching. That's not judging. That's not, labeling something as this or that, but actually just allowing it to be energy and move as energy. And so when we can sit in our stillness and allow the mind to keep doing its thing, but to detach and just watch it, and then also to allow whatever naturally unfolds. For me, there's always I usually feel a dropping into my heart and a relaxation of my body and a greater sense of ability to connect to this deeper part of myself. It's said that the soul, in yoga, it says that the soul lives in the heart. The seat of the soul is really the heart space. And so when I, am able to kind of calm this turning of the mind, or at least my sort of being caught up in the spin, and I can drop into my body, and then I can see it as spin, and I can just allow it to keep spinning. It's fine, but then it's like you take, I love the quote, attention goes where energy flows, where attention goes, or attention goes where energy flows. So it's basically wherever we put our attention, that's where there's going to be energy. And so when we're keeping our attention in the mind, that's where the energy will stay. But if we can slowly start to drop our attention into a deeper place, for me, my heart or my sensations in my body, my breath, then the energy goes there. And there's not as much energy and fuel for the spin of the mind, maybe the ego kind of, obsession in whatever it is that we're, engaged in at that moment. Yeah.
Well, I got a audio clip here. It's about a few minutes long. I want you to take a listen to this and then come back and relate it to your own experience. Okay?
Okay.
when Maharaji could read his mind and tell his future. I mean, I can't explain this. I'm a scientist, so I can't explain as a scientist what I observed.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the ashram, Kenshi, in North India. I got there because my wife extorted from me, practiced the ancient art of extortion on me, and said, I will leave you unless you come to visit in Crowley Baba. And I had to choose between being with my wife, who I've now been married to for 47 years, and again, they say hippie relationships don't last, 47 years, and because I loved her and I didn't want to leave her, or her, more to the point, her to leave me, I went with her to India, and I went to the ashram, and I had read Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now, and I met Ram Dass, and I was intrigued. But my first few days there were terrible. Everybody was bowing down to idols. I hated it.
Right.
It didn't go well with my Judeo-Christian beliefs. I mean, I know what the Ten Commandments say, thou shalt not have before me any other God, and I didn't like this. And then I didn't like the fact that everybody was touching this guy's foot. I mean, bending down and putting their hand on his foot. These were the two things that I didn't like. The third thing I didn't like was that he ignored me. I mean, I did think that I would get to the ashram. I mean, we had to come from San Francisco. I had to pay off all my debts, my medical school debts. Finally got there. I did expect I would go there, and the guru would say, well, welcome, grasshopper. I've been waiting for you. Not only was there no grasshopper and welcome,
right.
Nobody said anything to me. I felt like the odd man out.
Wow.
And they were so nice to my wife. It felt like she was in a cult, and I wasn't very happy. So after about a week of increasingly feeling like this scene was not my scene, I told Georgia, my wife, that I was feeling not well, and I took the day off, and I went around the lake, a kind of Himalayan glacial lake that was in the area, and I was trying to find something beautiful to put into my head to dispel my increasingly dark depression, because I realized if that was not for me, I would lose my wife. And so, you know, I would go and I would take a boat out into the middle of this awful lake that was filled with green algae. It was a eutrophic lake. It was a dying lake. The British had thrown all their junk in it, and now the Indians were paying the piper for that. But still, I kept on rowing. I'd go up to the bank, and I would see a little flower. And as if I could have put that flower into my head or into my heart, it would have made me feel better, but I couldn't do that. And I would just go, and I'd look at the temples that were there, and I would try to find some peace. And I would repeat my mafter. I would try to say something, a prayer in Hebrew or Sanskrit or Tibetan or Hindi or English, every kind of like the greatest hits. You know, the Lord's Prayer and Om Mani Padme Hung and Om Ram Shri Ram or Shema Yisrael. I mean, you know, I could kind of just rattle them off. I didn't know what they meant, but for the first time in my life, I became so distraught I started to pray. I wasn't even sure how to do that. You send a letter to God, you don't know what the proper salutation is. Mm-hmm. And I was trying so hard to be honest and express this terrible feeling I had that I was going to lose my wife. And literally, you know, how do you call the deprogrammers to get her out of a cult? Or if he would give me a small sign that this was the right place for her and for me, I would do anything. And, you know, I looked up in the sky and I said, it doesn't have to be a big rainbow in the sky, Lord. Give me a little tiny rainbow and an oil slick. I'm the only one that needs, you know, or just make me feel something. Or Ramakrishna famously saw two white egrets flying over the sky, which put him into samadhi, into ecstasy. I'll take one. And it can be a dark egret. I don't care. Anything. Nothing. But I had no sign.
Right.
I was more depressed than ever. And then I came home that night. I said, Georgia, this is not working for me. I'm going to leave. And she said, I know. And we cried and we hugged, and that night was just a terribly hard and tender and loving time together. And the next morning we got up and we packed our little orange backpacks. We divided our meager possessions, and then I got ready to go. And she said, "Well, you are going to say goodbye to him, aren't you?" And I said, we're from the Midwest. Of course you go to say goodbye. Our parents taught us. So I said, of course, I don't like this place, but I'm not without manners. So we got a taxi, and it took us down to the ashram, and as luck would have it, we were the first ones there. Of course, I don't believe it was luck. And as luck would have it, we sat down at the tabletop, it's called a tucket. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tucket. It's a little like a bench that he would sit on. And we waited, and I happened to notice that the villagers had brought flowers and fruit and sweets, and they had arrayed them on his tucket, on his bench, to make the letters of the name of God. And in Sanskrit or Hindi, that name is Ram, one of those names of Ram. And there were apples at the corners. The letters were so beautiful. It's called a mandala. So beautiful to have all these fruits and flowers and sweets arrayed to spell the name of God. And whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, like Ram, don't like Ram, have a different God you like, still, it's a treasure when people do that. And they're going to origami. It's such a sweet thing that they had done. And as we kind of sat down and jostled ourselves, one of the apples rolled off the tucket, landed on the ground, and in my monotheistic Jewish way, I noticed that the name of God was incomplete. And they teach you in Hebrew school that the name of God is sacred and it can never be incomplete. The letters cannot be incomplete. So I kind of reflexively reached down to pick up the apple, intending to lift it back up and complete the name of God. And the moment I put my hand down and grabbed the apple, the doors burst open, the Guru Neem Baba leaped out and jumped onto my hand.
No.
And pinned my hand to the ground with his foot.
Oh, my God.
And I was then not only a captive, it felt like he weighed hundreds of pounds. I couldn't, I was bigger and stronger and younger, but I couldn't extricate my hand.
Wow.
And I was touching his foot, exactly the thing that I had said offended me the most about being in India, this touching of feet. And he's got me pinned down there, and he looked at me, and it looked like he was 100 feet tall, and I looked like an insect. And he didn't say grasshopper, but he could have. He looked down at me and said, "You weren't here yesterday." And I had this kind of mixed feeling. I mean, on the one hand, I didn't like my foot touching, my hand touching his foot. On the other, I was glad he missed me,
Right. He acknowledged it for the first time. Right.
I thought and then he looked at me and said, "Where were you?" And he began to interrogate me, and all the time laughing. He said, did you go horseback riding? Did you go, snowshoeing? Things that you could never have done. And I'm thinking, he's putting me on. And then he looked at me, and his face just seemed to be filled with love. And his eyes filled with compassion. And he said, "Were you at the lake?" And when he said that, I got a buzz in the back of my spinal cord. And then he said, "Were you talking to God?" And then I got these tingles. And then he said, "Did you ask for a sign?" And that was it. I don't remember what happened next. I went into this state of consciousness that I'm sure was something like my older spiritual brother, so much more advanced than me, who I love and adore, my teacher Ramdas talked about. When Maharaji made all of the electrical circuits in his brain go so fast, his rational mind couldn't keep up with it. But for me, I had one more rational thought before I slipped into this state of consciousness. For a second, I looked up at him, and it seemed to me as he loved everybody in the world without distinction, every race, every religion, every caste, every gender, everything. He just loved everybody in the world. And I had this one thought, well, that's okay. He should love everybody in the world. He's a guru. And if he were a rabbi or a priest or a minister or an imam, their job description is to love everybody in the world. So he's just doing his job. And then I had this fleeting thought, but in this moment, I love everybody in the world. And I didn't know that this body, this machine, came equipped with the capacity to love everybody in the world. That was my last thought. And then I went and drifted into another state, and he started, playing with my beard, and all the other people in the ashram came around and hugged me, and Girija hugged me, and it gradually, as I came out of this state, I gradually realized that this was my initiation, that there wasn't going to be an initiation in an academic sense with hoods and gowns, and I wasn't going to be given a mystical password, and I didn't have to read a book. This was my initiation. And he looked at me and he said, Dr. America.
Well, Dan, I appreciate you sitting through that story. Dr. America, that was Dr. Larry Brilliant, and what transpired from that is that he eradicated smallpox in the world. He is responsible for that. Dr. Larry Brilliant, that was from my interview from March of 2017. And I ask you, Dayna, about the same thing. A point in your life when you, maybe it wasn't, in Dr. Brilliant's case, it was he was in love with his wife and wanted to authentically connect with on a spiritual level, and he couldn't find it in the lake. But then Maharaji, well, it was his initiation. And could you talk about your initiation?
Well, thank you for sharing that. That was exceptionally beautiful.
Well, I just want to say also, I cut off the Dr. America thing. He literally, the mission that Maharaji gave him was to cure smallpox. And that in itself was a titanic thing that he had to overcome. That's a whole story in and of itself. But when I think, anyway, tell me about your initiation.
Well, what's coming to me to share at this moment is something I've actually been talking about the last couple of days and remembering, which was related to what I shared at the beginning, that at a very young age, at about 13, 14, 15, I came across a Native American prophecy in a book by Tom Brown Jr., and it was a prophecy about the end of times, and that there would be a series of signs that would occur, and up until a certain point in these series of signs, humanity had the ability to consciously reverse the direction of basically destruction of humanity, and we consciously had the choice up to a certain point to reverse this direction and come together and create a new vibration, a different energy of connection, of love, of communion with each other and with the earth. And so there was a series of signs, and I really, this became my anthem at a very young age, like, wow, and the final sign was that the sky would turn red and the sky would start bleeding. And at this point in the process, there was really no turning back. And we were on, a path where really the children of the earth just needed to run into the wild places and create a new type of life for themselves, while the rest of civilization really burned itself up and out. And so as a very young person, I really held this so dear to me, this prophecy and this mission to reverse the direction that we were going in, of destruction, of imbalance, of degradation of all of life. And I remember there was a very particular moment in Brazil. I was in a ceremony. I was out in a beautiful place by the ocean with a beautiful community of people, and I had this vision, this experience of seeing these billowing red clouds come, and I knew at that point that the sky had turned red, that this was it. And this was irreversible at this point. And it was a very beautiful vision where I felt actually this understanding that from the very shadowy energies, the, what you call the hell realms, or this experience of deep, deep, deep suffering of humanity, all the way up, into the angelic realms of the Devis and of the gods and all of the angels and all the maybe higher vibrational beings, that this was all one whole and this was one unified experience of God. And in that moment, I realized that, even if the ship, goes in the wrong direction, even if, we can no longer stop this eventual, destruction of all of life, it's all God. All of these parts are there, and all of these parts are whole, and they're all an essential part of the one, of the wholeness. And in that moment, in that realization of both, wow, the sky is red now, and there, we may not be able to reverse this path anymore, and then at the same time realizing and seeing that it's all one, it's all whole, it's all perfect, it's all as it should be, it gave me this intense feeling of initiation in my own heart, where I dedicated myself at that moment. It was a very deep and personal process of really dedicating myself to living each moment of my life for that transformation, for the healing of the planet, that no matter what happens, staying in it, staying in the body, staying here, staying in the heart, and being of service and helping in any way that I could was my commitment and my intention in this life. And it was, a very powerful vision for me that really in my life, it felt incredibly powerful to commit myself in a new dimension, a new layer of my being to this what you call bringing the light in, bringing the healing in, being able to touch hearts and open that.
No, I mean, and thank you. There was the blood red sky is wonderful imagery, but Dr. Brilliant is a psychiatrist, a scientist. He's not a psychiatrist, but I mean, he's a serious doctor, and he could not explain what he observed. And that's, to me, that's what I most wanted when I thought about our interview last night, and I prayed about it. I said, I just want I want Dayna to talk about something that she observed, that not the stuff that you might have read out of a book and then you saw it. It's just something that you observed that you could not explain. It could have been yesterday, but it's just it's the mystical side of our being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in that example, that I just shared, it is unexplainable. But as we journey, for me, as I journey throughout my life, there's an ability to digest an experience, a little bit deeper, and sort of, it's like the goddess Saraswati. I love her so much. She's the goddess of refinement. Of, we go through these transformational experiences, and they can be so intense, total breakdown, total dissolution, which for me is that Kali energy. And it's happened in my life so many times where, the rug gets pulled from underneath my feet, or it feels like I'm in quicksand, or I'm in the middle of the ocean with no horizon and no ability to see where I'm going in any direction. just being turned in these waves, and that experience of dissolution can be so intensely confusing. I felt that in what Larry Brilliant was saying, that there was just like, I don't get this. What is this about? And how do I make sense of this? It doesn't make sense. And what I've learned in my journey, and is that it's actually about resting into that place, and not having to make sense of it, and not having to understand in such a way. And when we can sink and settle into that unknown and into that mystery, eventually, actually, it does shift. Eventually there, like, some clarity gets sparked. And for me, that's that Saraswati energy, that she comes in, that energy, and she helps us to create the wisdom from that experience that we can then go out and teach. She's the goddess of knowledge and of wisdom and of teachers. And so once we have digested an experience, then we can actually offer the medicine of that experience back out into the world.
What did you resist when you were younger?
What did I resist?
Yes. You are very, very, very good at, you are, I'm just trying to, there was a quote here. It says, what you resist persists. So what, Dayna Seraye, what did you resist? Because what you're talking about is the rug pulled out from under you. All that's great, but I'm just trying to hone in on the specifics, because you're very good at speaking in the. I want to know what you resisted, and that you eventually, I think you said, naturally fell into it. But what did you resist?
For me, there has been a. I can tend to be pretty visionary and pretty future oriented.
Absolutely.
And so this quality of just being right here, right now, in the imperfect, messy moment of the now, has been a huge challenge for me in my life. I can sort of jump to the next thing and, just move on and kind of do all that thing. So really sinking and settling in. That's why, that imagery for me of the being in the middle of the mess, the chaos, really. And that's been such a powerful mantra for me in my life, because it's something that I did resist. The human, messy, emotional, chaotic, distraught, bloody, suffering part of humanity. I have absolutely resisted that, and, practiced my way away from that, and, spoken my way out of that, and sang my way out of that. And so for me, there's always this balance of remembering to settle back into my humanity, into my heart, and into the messiness of the moment, and allow it to be here fully. And that allowing, that sinking into it, is what allows it to really shift and change and heal at the deepest level.
Why did you leave home by yourself to go to Boulder? I mean, was home a source of discontent, judgment? Ultimately, I guess what I'm trying to get at is why you eventually surrendered. How, again, we all I think some of the most powerful stuff you've said today has to do with be here now, as opposed to projection. But knowing that we're basically the same age, I was born in 78. There is this thing where, at least I grew up, and it was, first you do this, and then you go to high school, and then you go to college, and then you get a job, and then you have a family, and it's just very linear kind of thing. And what winds up happening is it's this projection, and that if you're not meeting what that societal thing is about, somehow anxiety or ego creeps in. That's just how I was programmed. And I know you surrendered at a certain point when you were 20 or so. And I'm trying to get to the crux of not the world burning and people, there's all this horrendous stuff on the macro level. But what was happening inside of you that that was. And Christian Das said it to me best.
Yeah.
Christian Das said to me, he goes, excuse my language. He goes, I was asking him about reaching a state of bliss when he chants, and he goes, I don't sing, I don't chant, I don't sing for bliss. I sing to fucking live. And I feel like for you and for me in my journey, I feel like you surrendered so you could live, Dayna. And I'm just wondering what the antecedent was to that.
I mean, if we go back to my, to share, my family, I would say, is probably similar to yours, very Midwestern, not conservative, My parents less so, but
no, they're just grounded. It's just grounded. Yeah, no, I dig. It's very...
well, conservative, but unemotional, I would say. Very unemotional, very, straight edge kind of linear, like you said, and unemotional, hardworking, just, pedal to the metal, and, didn't really acknowledge anything emotional and deeper, very little. And so I was raised in that way, and I was trained, to be unemotional in many ways, although, that's not my true nature, but there was just what was acceptable and what wasn't. And, I was very supported in my family life on all levels, I would say, except for the emotional level. And for me, when I turned 20 and I found Brazil and I found, an emotional man, a very emotional being to spend my time with, it was like the opposite. It was the exact opposite of my upbringing.
Right.
And it was wild, and it was crazy, and it was magical, and it was like insane, and it was full of prayer, and it was full of, like the total mystical energy, but it bordered on insanity. There was like an edge of like, wow.
Well, because it was a complete, because you were totally putting yourself into an insecure place, and at the same time, you were getting feelings that you had never received before.
It was that, and it was also like extreme, like I
what is extreme? Give me an example of extreme. What is that?
Yeah, well, I tend to kind of throw myself in, because I've always been a seeker, so I tend to, throw myself into really fiery situations that, so, it was like extreme, like, I mean, one example where, we buy a car in Brazil.
Right.
Car, and we don't have that much money, and we're going to these shady places, and I got my mouth closed so that they don't know I'm American, so I'm not speaking anything, and this man I'm with is just wheeling and dealing and creating these deals and figuring this out. And we buy this old beat up car. We call her Maria da Graça. Mary of Grace becomes the name of our car, Mary of Grace. And we're driving through Brazil in this car, and this car breaks down. Oh, like it constantly is breaking down. The magic is that wherever the car breaks down,
right,
we are absolutely supported in every single way. There's like someone there to help us exactly with the right thing we need.
Wow.
And we get it going,
That's
and then
beautiful.
all of a sudden we're back on the road and we're going. And this is how my journey through Brazil at 20 went. It was like in this car that we named Mary of Grace. And we would just, I remember driving up a muddy mountain trying to make it to an event that we really, it was raining and just praying that the wheels of this car would be carried forward by the angels. And, that the car wouldn't break down in the middle of this muddy, mountainside, and it would carry us, and we would get there. And I remember another story, we were driving down to visit some friends in a different region of Brazil, and we were lost, and it was the middle of the night, and we didn't know where we were, and we knew we were close, but we didn't know, what to do, like in terms of how to find this place in the middle of the night, and then the car breaks down. And we get out, and, this man I'm with, he's like cursing and, how do we, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, she just needs a break. Let's just breathe, let's just breathe, and we'll hold on a minute, like calm down and breathe. And we're there doing that, and the sun starts to come up, and we get back in the car, and she starts right up when we drive up the hill, we realize we were on the land that we were supposed to be on. So there was this incredible magic to my experiences at that time that opened me up to this whole other realm of possibility, and that, you know, grace and spirit is like, you know, in Brazil, it's like that runs the show.
That's right. No, and you just, and whether or not you know it, or you just pulled the Larry Brilliant. I mean, you're not necessarily a scientist, but what happened could not be explained. How could the car keep breaking down and the right part or the right person is there, or that you wind up on the land that you're supposed to be on? And I mean, some people would say that's faith, but you had, but I guess my question also is to talk to people out there who are seekers like us, who are going on the insecure path, because it is the secure path. What was it like, and to deal with the fact, I'm speculating here, that when you came back after truly transcendent experiences, that your family probably had no ability to understand you at that point. How do you deal? My folks are the same way. I had a lot more love than you did, a lot more emotive, much more than I think you probably did. But my parents were fixated on, preoccupied on, you know, just sort of planning, obsessive planning, not having a lot of faith, certainly not be here now, certainly not believe, kind of mocking in many ways traditional religions, just because my mom had a very bad time in Catholic school. So I was raised with, you know, and so ultimately, now that I've been on this path for 7 years, and quite honestly, it has been, you know, I mean, I can relate to your Brazilian trip just because there's been a lot of, you know, sort of cosmic intervention. But I haven't given up in a bad way. I just feel so secure. I feel so secure in what I am doing, and that I'm painting this legacy that very much may resonate well after I've left this planet in this form, that I don't feel any need to have to talk about it, or to obviously, you know, I am very proud. I put you read all my excerpts, or you see me putting stuff up online. But when it comes to your family, the people that birthed you, that you know are, you know, I don't feel an insecurity to have to explain to them, because I don't think
that change them. Yeah.
And so I wonder, when you came back when you finally got invigorated with these feelings, I want you to talk to the audience about how you've dealt with this idea of taking the insecure path and not worrying or not feeling less than because your family doesn't necessarily understand it, or maybe they've come around. But I just want you to talk to people about how to deal with that sort of people's inability, who are living in this sort of, you know, sort of shallow existence. Yeah. And how you deal with that, how you dealt with that, especially when you were 20, and how you learned to live with the fact that I'm going to be secure because this is my true nature. And if they don't get it, I'm not going to waste time, my energy, you know, trying to convince them. Yeah.
Well, it's been a process for sure. I think as we grow and mature and gain more experience, for me, at least personally, you know, where at first I might have been really, you know, excited and passionate and inspired.
Totally
to,
inspired.
Shake them up,
right.
You know, like shake them up and make them see what I see, and, you know, help them to heal or grow, or, you know, release these limitations that I see in them. And, you know, over time, you know, maybe that played a bigger role at the beginning. And over time, there's just been I feel like when you say a security in the self, I feel like that's a really important thing to emphasize, that it really begins in ourselves. When we're feeling insecure in the self, that's when we need to change everyone else around us, so that we can feel somewhat more secure in their presence. Yeah. But when we actually anchor in a sense of security in ourselves, then people can be just as they are. You know, we're not depending on these outside forces for our own sense of self. So when we can ground and anchor in that sense of self, then people can just absolutely be who they are, and we can just show up and love them completely as they are. And that's for me, been where I've taken my practice with my family. And, it's amazing when we hold a frequency, we hold a resonance, that is impactful. We don't actually have to say anything, but just to hold an energy in ourselves creates massive change. It's like we know as with family systems and complex kind of energetic relationships, when we change ourselves, the world around us can't help but adapt. And so I found that in my own life. It's like, just focus here and just, anchor and ground here as much as I possibly can, open my heart as much as I can, be the person I want to be, heal what I need to heal, and then trust, so much trust that then ripples out and does affect others. And that everybody else has their own path, their own journey, their own pace, all in its own time. There's divine timing in everything. The fruit ripens on the tree at the exact moment that the fruit is ready to ripen on the tree, and it can't be forced to ripen any earlier than it's going to ripen. And so to trust divine timing and have patience, and to just hold ourselves, just like you said, in your own security, in your own sense of self with a capital S, and then allow everybody else to do their thing. It's so liberating. We don't have to change anybody.
If I was meandering around Boulder and I encountered you by the river, and I said, because I talk to mostly artists and musicians. You're definitely an artist in your own way, and you are actually a musician too. Not professional, I don't think, but a lot of the cats, they'll say, I borrowed and stole from my mentors, and everybody borrows, everybody steals, and then ultimately you have those tools, and then what do you have to say for yourself to make you singular and stand out and get above the morass? And so I know that you've cultivated your true nature for a long time, and you've gone on the insecure path. But if I encountered you and I said, why, I don't want to say what makes you different, but how have you developed your singularity? How have you developed your individual voice? It's always because in music today, there's so much material, and we're saturated with material that it's harder for younger cats to develop their own individual voice because there's just so much there to borrow and steal from. And so Dayna, what makes you, what is your singularity? What is your genius that you inject into your path of the heart that makes you unique?
Well, it's an interesting question. So I was speaking with a friend recently, and we were sharing about how it can be really challenging sometimes to see our own genius, to really know, it's like it's easier sometimes to be seen for that than to really see it. And to, sometimes we're in such a mystery of our own life and of our own aliveness and of our own awakening, and I think that's actually the sweet spot, is when we are in that mystery and we've surrendered to the place of not knowing, and we don't have to be so defined, and so confined to that definition.
Right.
But we actually just allow the spirit of nature, the spirit of divine intelligence, the natural intelligence, the creative life force to flow through us in each and every moment, opening to that in each and every moment, and allowing that to be what creates this present moment experience of genius. That for me is really where I find my meditations these days. And I've learned so much from so many incredible teachers. My current, the teacher I'm learning from so much right now is a man in India, Ananda Mehrotra, and he is an incredible channel for wisdom and awakening. And so I learned so much from him. And what it really feels to me, the key is to actually drop all conceptions, all intellectual concepts of who I am or what I'm here to do and who I'm here to, offer to, and any idea that I have my own sense of that. Actually, for the most part at this point, I'm like, just clear that out of my ego, clear it away. Like I actually don't want to know. I don't want to have to know, just allow spirit to channel through me and let me show up to each and every moment and be a contribution. That's really what I want to be doing.
Is that the feedback? Is that the feedback you get from regular peeps who are like, this was different than anything else I've ever? I mean, what I'm saying is I dig, like I'm so in my own. To me, the only things that my geniuses are instinct and intuition. Or I am where you are, you, and I don't, whatever that. I mean, so I have just sort of formulated that to the point where I can talk to people that are 50 years older than me, and I know exactly where they were at a certain period of time in our cultural heritage, and I can blow them out of the water, not just because I can feel it, because I can feel it. And so and again, it's not about preservation. My parents were librarians. To me, this is about promotion of how real music is made. So I'm wearing that as a badge of honor, but cats are coming up to Dayna Seraye and saying, no one's ever, I mean, do you get this sort of thing where they're like, that was different? If so, what is it?
Yeah, I think that,
you can be a little bit egotistical if you want here.
Yeah, I mean, I think just what I want to, kind of speak to around that is that, what I try to hold, if any intention I have is that each and every one of us has a genius, has what I like to say, a unique flavor of radiance. If we're all from the same, sun, the same one light, we each shine a ray of radiance in our own unique and brilliant way. And that the work really is to refine our roughness so that can shine forth in our own way that is only ours to shine. It's like a snowflake. There's no, every snowflake is different and unique and beautiful in its own way. And if anything, I try to hold a space for others to feel and realize that within themselves, so that they can shine as brilliantly as each and every one of us is meant to shine on this planet. And each and every one of us is needed to do that shining so that we can change this frequency and really elevate and really find a walk that serves deeply the earth and all beings. So if anything, my intention is to hold the space of the heart so that each and every one of us can drop into that deep embodied knowing within ourselves that we are just as beautiful as the next person, just as powerful as the next being, and truly here to be in connection with each other and hold these flames, together, each of us holding our own flame, and then together it lights it all up for everyone else. Get still in myself and hold space and allow, maybe there's a co-creative force that wants to come through. It's not a sense of like an agenda. Something has to happen in a particular way, but really to open up the field so that the magic can flow through and hold space for each person's magic. There's not a template for that. Actually, it's more of like clear all the templates and just allow the intuitive guidance from each individual to take root and to take form and to then manifest and lead.
I just wonder about, to me, it's like when you're teaching these classes, do you, because I mean, you're an incredible motivational speaker, but I think to myself, and you're deeply rooted in practical application. But the thing is, for most cats, they go home and they're like, boy, that was a great pep talk. But then they're going back to their habitual nature. And so what do you how do you get them do you keep an open line of communication with people? I mean, so I mean that if they are looking to find balance, that they can reach out to you. I'm curious about what separates you're not going to get a transformational experience in one weekend with Dayna Seraye. I mean, it's going to be a lifelong journey on their part to break their habitual nature. So, I mean, you keep your doors open to everybody. That would seem like a very high demand.
Well, I offer one-on-one work with people. I offer one-on-one healing, transformational, spiritual counseling sessions. so that's one way that I work continuously with people, and then people also can come consistently to my classes. I mean, I have a beautiful 14-year-old son to tend to, and, I'm not just constantly available.
I know. No, I mean, I know you're not. I mean, you are not. There's no way that.
Yeah, and yet I do value what you're saying, that sense of continuity and being able to check in regularly. And so I offer the one-on-one work, and I offer, regular classes, and, just really invite people to bring their full selves into that. I always stay after class so people can talk and share and ask questions and whatever arises. And, it is a process. And I think the greatest thing that I, want people to understand is, like, be gentle with themselves. It is a process. And, I feel like when we show up fully, it's like we take one step forward and Spirit takes 10,000 steps towards us. And that we can trust that, like, to really anchor ourselves in, this was a good step. I just took a really good step. And maybe I'm not, where I feel like I need to be ultimately perfection. From my understanding of awakening and enlightenment and illumination, is there is no end. This is an ever ongoing process of evolution, ever expanding journey, that there is no end. So we can just throw that out the window right now, that there's a perfect, place that we will arrive at one day. And we can just trust that this step was a good step. And I can breathe, and I can rest, and I can just, like, acknowledge myself that I took a step. And that's beautiful and brilliant. And sometimes we take big quantum leaps, and those are also really brilliant. Sometimes coming to a weekend workshop, or even one class, or even one session, can be that quantum leap of breakthrough. And that's really possible as well. And then sometimes it's like, the baby step, one little baby step after the other, and just showing up every day to your practice, showing up every day to your meditation, showing up every day in your prayer, in your heart. And even if you feel lost and you feel confused and you feel, like out of sorts, and like there's no way out of this moment, to just feel that, instead of go towards the alcohol or the addiction or the whatever it is that we try to numb ourselves with, so we don't have to feel that. I mean, to just feel is a huge step. And so, I try to encourage, my students and people in my life to really acknowledge that, it's okay, wherever you're at on the journey is okay. And it's, and that's healing in and of itself.
One final question in set one here with Dayna Seraye. It's been unbelievably cosmic. I looked up the definition of a priestess, a female priest of a non-Christian religion.
I wonder who wrote that.
What's that?
I said, I wonder who wrote that.
Yeah, exactly. What is? I think you just kind of articulated it, but what is your definition of a priestess? I mean, it is in this time that we live in of hyper religiosity and traditional religions feeling confined or threatened or under attack. A priestess, I mean, it's a very noble calling. And how did you attain that? And how are you a priestess, Dayna?
For me, language is limiting, and putting definitions on some of these concepts can just be a little confusing and a little, there's this limitation around language that I just want to acknowledge.
I know you want to acknowledge that, but I will say that when you look up who Dayna Seraye is, these terms are all over Google, right? So the language is powerful. Anyway, I know what you're saying, so go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, so there's that piece, and so for me, calling myself a priestess has a very much a feeling to it. It's harder to describe in words, and words, land in each individual person according to their state of consciousness. Those words are going to speak a different way. So just acknowledging that. But for me, there's a feeling of devotion, of being devoted to the divine. For me, it often is in form of the divine mother, of the goddess, being in devotion and living my life purposefully in devotion, so that for me, healing, wholeness, balance, beauty can be the norm on our planet. So it's very simple, really. It's living a devotional life where, I can be of service.
But it's a feeling. It's not something you can learn.
So it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's like when we stay on the level of the mind and the concept, it doesn't go very far in. But when we drop down to the level of the heart, there all of a sudden we have a greater capacity to understand something on a different level, to feel something. And then when it anchors all the way down into the level of the soul, we just simply live it. It's an embodied fullness of experience. And so for me, this path of the priestess is that it's a soulful experience of living my life as much as I can, and I am not perfect in any way, shape, or form, and I don't always meet myself where I want to meet myself, but there's an underlying intention, a seed, a vibration that I am resting into, that is really about being in service and being coming from my heart and being in devotion, being connection to the divine, to spirit that moves in all things, and really like invoking that, as much as I can wherever I go, seeing the divine in each person, seeing the divine in each tree, seeing in each flower, seeing in each falling leaf, that divinity, that natural intelligence. Again, words can be challenging. So whatever the word is that meets you where you're at, feeling that essence of life force in each thing, and calling that forth. That for me is what I strive to also rest into, so it's both a intention, but also like, wow, just can I rest a little bit more into this truth of my being?
Well, the path of the heart, the high priestess, Dayna Seraye. Such a high honor to connect with you. I hope we can do part 2 very soon. I have more to get to with you, and I really enjoyed your. Well, I mean, all I can say is that it was phenomenal to hear somebody who is cultivating and has been cultivating for a long time, patience, real love, and keeping your heart open. Maybe it was because of the, not the extreme, but the fact that you were so void of that emotional response from your family. Maybe it's just easier for you to, and you've been cultivating it for so long, for you to fall into that, like you said, you just fall into this place of security. But not only is it evident on a spiritual level, you were incredibly articulate in describing things that, quite honestly, words don't always do justice to. And I commend you, and I look forward to continue to collaborate with you. I know we were brought together by the Spirit for this reason.
Well, thank you so much, Jake. Really an honor and pleasure to talk with you today, and to hear your curiosities and your questions, and digging for the gold. So I really appreciate the way that you've shown up here, and this connection. So thank you so much, and many blessings for whatever is to come.
Me too.
As we unfold this. Yeah.
Have a beautiful day. By the way, we went for 93 minutes, not 50. So,
yeah.
Well, I mean, wow. And part of it was Dr. Larry took up like 8 or 9 minutes, but blessings to you, my friend, and you just keep cooking there. You're doing a heck of a job, and we'll do more to come.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Jake.
Later on.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Dayna Seraye, helping to realign the mind, body, and spirit in her own way, affecting change in her world. And It was beautiful. We'll be back in a couple days with Steve Cropper on the Jake Feinberg Show.